The golden afternoon sunlight streamed through the kitchen windows of the Johnson family farmhouse as 14-year-old Ashley Johnson carefully packed sandwiches and apples into a small wicker basket. It was Saturday, July 8, 2003, and the summer vacation days stretched endlessly ahead with the promise of adventures and freedom that only children raised on a working farm could truly understand. Ashley's younger sister, 11-year-old Megan, sat at the kitchen table, swinging her legs impatiently while waiting for their impromptu picnic to be organized, her blonde pigtails bouncing with each movement as she chattered excitedly about their plans to explore the far reaches of their family's property. The Johnson farm sprawled across 400 acres of rolling hills and creek-fed meadows in rural Tennessee, approximately 15 miles outside the small town of Cedar Valley. The property had been in the Johnson family for 3 generations, passed down from Ashley and Megan's great-grandfather who had established the farm in the 1920s. Their father, David Johnson, raised cattle and grew corn and soybeans, while their mother, Linda, maintained a large vegetable garden and helped manage the farm's financial operations from her home office. Ashley and Megan had grown up exploring every corner of their family's land, developing an intimate knowledge of the pastures, woodlands, and creek systems that made up their rural playground. The girls were responsible and capable, having been taught from an early age about farm safety and the importance of staying within designated boundaries when exploring on their own. Their parents trusted them to venture out together during daylight hours, knowing that Ashley's maturity and protective instincts would keep both girls safe during their adventures. The wicker basket that Ashley was packing had belonged to their grandmother, who had used it for similar picnics when David Johnson was a child growing up on the same farm. The girls loved hearing stories about their father's childhood adventures and often tried to recreate some of his experiences, imagining themselves as pioneers exploring uncharted territory despite their thorough familiarity with every trail and landmark on the property. Megan was particularly excited about their destination for the afternoon picnic, a secluded spot along Willow Creek where the water formed a small natural pool surrounded by smooth rocks that provided perfect seating for outdoor dining. The location was approximately half a mile from the farmhouse, accessible via a well-worn path that meandered through a grove of oak trees before emerging into the open meadow where the creek curved and deepened. "Are you ready yet?" Megan asked for the 3rd time in 5 minutes, her enthusiasm making it difficult to sit still while Ashley completed her methodical packing process. The younger girl was eager to begin their adventure and had already changed into her favorite play-clothes denim shorts and a bright yellow t-shirt that featured a cartoon horse, reflecting her dreams of someday owning her own pony. Ashley smiled at her sister's impatience, understanding the anticipation that came with summer afternoons and unlimited possibilities for outdoor fun. At 14, Ashley was beginning to show the responsibility and maturity that came with being the older sibling, but she still retained enough childhood wonder to share Megan's excitement about their simple picnic adventure. "Almost ready," Ashley replied, adding a thermos of lemonade that their mother had prepared fresh that morning. Ashley was wearing her usual summer outfit of khaki shorts and a blue tank top, along with the silver chain necklace that had been a birthday gift from their grandmother the previous year. The necklace featured a small heart-shaped pendant engraved with Ashley's initials, and she rarely removed it except for bathing or sleeping. Linda Johnson was in her home office reviewing farm financial records when the girls stopped to let her know about their picnic plans. As a mother who had grown up on a farm herself, Linda understood the importance of allowing children to explore and develop independence while maintaining appropriate safety boundaries. She trusted Ashley's judgment and knew that both girls were capable of handling a simple afternoon outing to a familiar location on their own property. "Stay together, don't go near the deep part of the creek, and be back by 5 o'clock for dinner," Linda instructed, the same reminders she gave whenever the girls ventured out together. The girls nodded their understanding and promised to follow the safety rules that had been established through years of farm living and outdoor exploration. David Johnson was working in the barn with their hired hand, Tom Bradley, when Ashley and Megan stopped to wave goodbye before beginning their walk to Willow Creek. David looked up from the tractor he was repairing and smiled at his daughters, feeling the satisfaction that came from providing them with the kind of childhood that fostered independence, creativity, and a deep connection with nature. "Have fun, girls," he called out, returning to his mechanical work with the contentment of a father who knew his children were safe and happy on their family land. The farm represented not just a livelihood for the Johnson family, but a way of life that emphasized hard work, self-reliance, and the simple pleasures that came from living close to the land. Ashley and Megan left the farmhouse at 2:30 p.m., walking hand in hand along the familiar path that led through the oak grove toward Willow Creek. The afternoon was warm but comfortable, with a gentle breeze that rustled the leaves overhead and carried the sweet scent of wildflowers that grew in the meadows surrounding their route. Both girls were in high spirits, chattering about their plans for the remainder of the summer and sharing the kind of intimate conversation that characterized their close sisterly relationship. The path to Willow Creek was well maintained by the frequent passage of the girls and other family members who enjoyed the peaceful spot for fishing, swimming, and quiet reflection. The route passed several landmarks that Ashley and Megan had named during their years of exploration. A large oak tree with initials carved by their father and uncle decades earlier, a boulder that resembled a sleeping elephant, and a small clearing where wildflowers grew in colorful profusion during the spring and early summer months. As the girls walked, they discussed their plans for the picnic and their hopes for the remainder of their summer vacation. Ashley was looking forward to starting high school in the fall, and had been reading books to prepare for more challenging academic work. Megan was excited about entering 6th grade and potentially joining the school's softball team, a sport she had been practicing with Ashley throughout the summer. The sisters reached the picnic spot along Willow Creek at approximately 3 p.m., finding the location exactly as they had left it during their previous visit a week earlier. The natural pool was clear and inviting, reflecting the blue sky and white clouds that drifted overhead. The smooth rocks that surrounded the water provided comfortable seating, and the shade from nearby trees created a perfect environment for their outdoor meal. Ashley spread an old quilt on the grassy area next to the creek, while Megan began exploring the water's edge, looking for interesting stones and small creatures that lived in the shallow areas of the stream. The girls had established a routine for their creek visits that balanced relaxation with exploration, always maintaining awareness of their surroundings and the passage of time. The picnic proceeded exactly as the girls had planned, with sandwiches eaten while sitting on the quilt and lemonade shared from the thermos that had belonged to their grandmother. Ashley and Megan talked about everything and nothing, enjoying the kind of lazy afternoon conversation that strengthened their bond and created the memories that would last a lifetime. After finishing their meal, the girls decided to explore upstream from their usual picnic spot, curious about a section of the creek that they had never thoroughly investigated. Ashley carefully repacked their picnic supplies and left the basket in the shade near their quilt, planning to retrieve it when they returned from their brief exploration. However, Ashley and Megan Johnson never returned to collect their picnic basket that afternoon. When 5 o'clock came and went without the girls appearing for dinner, Linda Johnson began to feel the first stirrings of concern. The girls were usually punctual about mealtimes and understood the importance of honoring the time limits that their parents established for their outdoor adventures. By 5:30 p.m., Linda's concern had escalated to worry. She called David in from the barn and explained that the girls had not returned from their picnic at Willow Creek. David's initial reaction was annoyance rather than alarm. He assumed that the girls had simply lost track of time while playing and exploring, a common occurrence with children who were enjoying summer freedom. David walked to Willow Creek to retrieve the girls and remind them about their dinner obligations. The walk took him approximately 15 minutes, following the same path that Ashley and Megan had taken 3 hours earlier. When he reached the picnic spot, David found their wicker basket and quilt exactly where they had been left, but there was no sign of either daughter. David called their names loudly, his voice echoing across the meadow and into the surrounding woods. When he received no response, he began searching the immediate area around the creek, thinking that the girls might be playing a game or might have wandered just far enough away that they couldn't hear his calls. The search revealed no trace of Ashley and Megan, though David did notice footprints in the soft earth near the creek that appeared to lead upstream from the picnic area. Following the footprints, David traced his daughters' path for approximately 200 yards before the tracks disappeared in a rocky section of the creek bed where the water was too shallow to preserve clear impressions. At this point, David's annoyance transformed into genuine concern as he realized that the girls had wandered farther from their designated picnic area than they had ever done before. David continued calling Ashley and Megan's names while searching along both sides of Willow Creek, thinking that they might have crossed the water or followed the stream in a different direction than their footprints indicated. His search expanded to include the wooded areas on both sides of the creek, though he was careful not to venture so far that he might miss the girls if they returned to the picnic area while he was looking for them. When David returned to the farmhouse at 6:15 p.m. without his daughters, Linda knew immediately that something was seriously wrong. Ashley and Megan had never disappeared for such an extended period without explanation, and they would never have ignored their father's calls if they were anywhere within hearing distance. Linda called the Cedar Valley Sheriff's Department, while David organized a more systematic search of the farm property. Sheriff Robert Martinez was a family friend who had known the Johnson girls since they were small children, and he understood immediately that their disappearance was completely out of character and potentially dangerous. The initial search for Ashley and Megan began at sunset on July 8, 2003, with Sheriff Martinez and 3 deputies joining David Johnson and farm worker Tom Bradley in a systematic examination of the 400-acre property. The searchers used powerful flashlights and called the girls names continuously, hoping that they might have become lost in an unfamiliar section of the farm and were waiting for rescue. The search continued throughout the night and expanded at dawn on July 9th to include volunteers from the Cedar Valley community and K-9 units from the state police. The bloodhounds were able to track Ashley and Megan's scent from the farmhouse to the picnic area at Willow Creek, and from there upstream for approximately the same distance that David had followed their footprints the previous evening. Beyond the rocky section of the creek bed, the dogs lost the scent trail completely. Officer Lisa Rodriguez, who worked with the K-9 unit, explained that scent could be disrupted by water, changes in weather conditions, or the passage of time. However, the abrupt end of the trail was puzzling and suggested that the girls' scent had been interrupted by some factor, rather than simply fading naturally. Detective Carol Walsh of the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation took over the case on July 10th, bringing specialized expertise in missing persons investigations to what was now being treated as a potential abduction. Walsh was a 15-year veteran who had worked dozens of cases involving missing children, and she understood the critical importance of the first 72 hours in determining the outcome of such investigations. Detective Walsh's initial interviews with the Johnson family revealed no obvious motives for the girls' disappearance. David and Linda had no enemies, no financial problems, and no recent conflicts that might have motivated someone to target their children. The farm was successful and profitable, the family was well regarded in the community, and there were no custody disputes or family problems that might explain the girls' vanishing. The investigation expanded to include everyone who had contact with the Johnson family or who had been in the area around the time of the girls' disappearance. Tom Bradley, the farm worker, had been with David in the barn all afternoon and had solid alibis for the time period when Ashley and Megan vanished. Neighbors reported no unusual activity or unfamiliar vehicles in the area, and there were no recent reports of suspicious individuals in Cedar Valley or the surrounding rural areas. Detective Walsh also investigated the possibility that Ashley and Megan had encountered an accident or natural hazard that prevented them from returning home. Teams of searchers examined every section of Willow Creek for evidence that the girls might have fallen into deep water or become trapped in some way. However, the creek was generally shallow and slow-moving, and experienced local swimmers considered it safe for children who understood basic water safety. The search efforts included specialized teams with underwater equipment who examined every deep pool and potential hazard along the entire length of Willow Creek as it passed through the Johnson property. Caves and abandoned structures in the area were systematically searched, and searchers used ground-penetrating radar to examine areas where the girls might have fallen into hidden cavities or old wells. After 1 week of intensive searching involving over 200 volunteers and professional personnel, no trace of Ashley and Megan Johnson had been found. Detective Walsh was forced to conclude that the girls had either been abducted from their family's property or had met with some accident that had completely concealed their remains. The investigation continued with a focus on potential abduction scenarios. Detective Walsh worked with FBI behavioral analysts to develop profiles of individuals who might target children in rural settings. The analysis suggested that the perpetrator was likely someone familiar with the area who had been observing the girls' routines and had planned the abduction carefully to avoid detection. As weeks passed without developments, the Johnson family struggled to cope with the devastating uncertainty of not knowing what had happened to their daughters. Linda took extended leave from her work helping manage the farm, while David found it difficult to maintain normal farming operations while constantly hoping for news about Ashley and Megan. The community of Cedar Valley rallied around the Johnson family, organizing fundraisers to support the search efforts and providing meals and emotional support during the crisis. Local businesses displayed posters with the girls, photographs, and reward funds were established to encourage anyone with information to come forward. The first anniversary of the disappearance brought renewed media attention and fresh tips from the public, but none of the new information led to significant developments in the investigation. As years passed, the case gradually transitioned from an active investigation to a cold case that was reviewed periodically but had no new leads to pursue. Ashley and Megan would have graduated from high school in 2007 and 2010 respectively, milestones that their parents observed with private grief and public appeals for information about their daughter's fate. The farmhouse remained largely unchanged, with the girls, bedrooms preserved exactly as they had been on July 8, 2003, serving as shrines to their memory and symbols of their parents' ongoing hope for their return. Detective Walsh retired from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation in 2018, but she never stopped thinking about the Johnson sisters case. She had developed a personal connection to the family and continued to review the case file periodically, hoping that new technology or information might eventually provide answers about the girls' fate. The breakthrough in the case came in October 2023, 20 years after Ashley and Megan's disappearance. A group of metal detecting enthusiasts from Nashville had received permission from the current owners of the Johnson farm to search for historical artifacts along Willow Creek. The Johnson family had sold the property in 2015, unable to continue living where their daughters had vanished, but the new owners were aware of the farm's tragic history and were supportive of efforts that might provide answers about the girls' fate. Brothers Mike and Steve Patterson had been metal detecting for over 15 years and were experienced in searching creek beds and waterways for coins, jewelry, and other metal objects that might have been lost or discarded over time. They were working along a section of Willow Creek approximately half a mile upstream from the original picnic area when Mike's metal detector registered a strong signal beneath several inches of creek sediment. Carefully excavating the area, Mike uncovered a tarnished silver chain necklace that had been buried in the creek bed for what appeared to be a considerable period of time. The necklace featured a heart-shaped pendant that was engraved with the initials AJ in script lettering that was still clearly visible despite years of exposure to water and sediment. The Patterson brothers immediately recognized the potential significance of their discovery and contacted the current property owners, who in turn contacted law enforcement. Detective Jennifer Morrison, who had taken over responsibility for cold cases, arrived at the scene within hours and immediately confirmed that the necklace matched the description of jewelry that Ashley Johnson had been wearing on the day she disappeared. The discovery of Ashley's necklace provided the first concrete evidence about the Johnson sisters' fate in 20 years. Detective Morrison immediately organized a comprehensive search of the area where the necklace had been found, using both metal detectors and specialized equipment designed to locate human remains that might be buried in creek sediment. The expanded search revealed additional evidence that confirmed the worst fears about Ashley and Megan's fate. Buried approximately 3 feet beneath the creek bed, searchers discovered human remains that forensic analysis would later confirm belonged to both sisters. The location was in a remote section of Willow Creek that had never been thoroughly searched during the original investigation, because it was so far from where the girls were last known to have been. The condition of the remains made it difficult to determine the exact cause of death, but forensic examination revealed evidence that was consistent with homicide rather than accidental death. The positioning of the remains and the careful burial beneath the creek bed suggested that someone had killed the girls and then concealed their bodies in a location where they were unlikely to be discovered. Detective Morrison immediately reopened the active investigation into what was now confirmed as a double homicide. The evidence from the burial site was analyzed using forensic techniques that had not been available in 2003, including advanced DNA analysis that might identify the perpetrator even after 20 years. The DNA analysis revealed genetic material from an unknown male individual on clothing fragments that had been preserved by the burial conditions. This evidence was entered into national databases and compared against samples from other crime scenes and known offenders. The search revealed a match to DNA evidence from another unsolved case involving missing children in a neighboring county. The DNA match led investigators to Raymond Cooper, a now deceased convicted sex offender who had been living in the Cedar Valley area in 2003, but had never been seriously considered as a suspect in the Johnson sisters' disappearance. Cooper had been questioned briefly during the original investigation, but had provided an alibi that had not been thoroughly verified at the time. Further investigation into Cooper's background revealed a pattern of behavior that made him a compelling suspect in the girls' murders. Cooper had been arrested multiple times for offenses involving children, and he had demonstrated the kind of planning and local knowledge that would have been necessary to abduct and murder the Johnson sisters without being detected. The investigation revealed that Cooper had been familiar with the Johnson farm property through his work as a seasonal laborer for various farms in the area. He would have known about the family's routines and the girls' tendency to explore their property independently. Most significantly, Cooper had owned a pickup truck in 2003 that would have allowed him to transport the girls' bodies to the remote burial site along Willow Creek. Detective Morrison's investigation revealed that Cooper had apparently approached Ashley and Megan while they were exploring upstream from their picnic area, possibly claiming to be a farm worker or someone who needed assistance. Once he had gained control of the girls, he had taken them to his truck and transported them to a secondary location where he killed them, before returning to bury their bodies in the creek bed. The resolution of the Johnson sisters' case provided closure for their family, though it also brought the painful knowledge that Ashley and Megan had been murdered by a predator who had targeted them specifically because of their vulnerability and isolation. David and Linda Johnson, now divorced and living in different states, found some comfort in finally knowing what had happened to their daughters, but the knowledge also brought renewed grief and anger about the senseless nature of their deaths. Raymond Cooper had died in prison in 2019 while serving time for other crimes, meaning that he would never be prosecuted for the Johnson sisters' murders. However, Detective Morrison was able to officially close the investigation with confidence that the perpetrator had been identified and that he could no longer harm other children. The discovery of Ashley and Megan's remains led to changes in how missing persons cases are investigated in rural areas. The case highlighted the importance of expanding search areas beyond the immediate vicinity of where people were last seen, particularly in cases involving potential abduction. The advanced metal detecting technology that led to the necklace discovery was subsequently used by law enforcement agencies in other cold cases. The Johnson farm, now owned by a different family, continues to operate as a working agricultural property. A small memorial marker placed near Willow Creek serves as a reminder of Ashley and Megan Johnson and the tragic fate that befell them during what should have been a simple summer afternoon picnic. The case of the Johnson sisters serves as a reminder of how rural properties can provide both freedom and vulnerability for children, and how predators can exploit the isolation and trust that characterize farm life. Their story continues to be studied by law enforcement professionals and used in training programs for investigators who specialize in missing persons and child abduction cases. The silver necklace that Ashley had treasured as a gift from her grandmother became the key that finally solved the mystery of what happened to two sisters who loved exploring their family's land. The treasure hunters who discovered it had been searching for historical artifacts, but instead found evidence that brought closure to one of Tennessee's most enduring missing persons cases. Today, the wicker basket that Ashley had so carefully packed for their final picnic together sits in a storage facility, preserved as evidence in a case that took 20 years to solve. The basket serves as a reminder of the innocent adventure that two sisters had planned for a summer afternoon, and of how quickly a normal day can turn into unimaginable tragedy when predators target vulnerable children. The Patterson brothers continue their metal detecting hobby, but they will never forget the day when their search for buried treasure instead revealed the truth about two young girls who had been missing for 2 decades. Their discovery brought justice and closure to a case that had haunted a family and community for 20 years, proving that sometimes the most important treasures are not made of gold or silver, but are instead the answers that allow families to finally find peace.